Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be from, whatever time you happen to be from. Words are coming hard for me today. It's a problem, and we're going to do our very best to struggle through the difficulty of making words today. Because welcome to the Untitled Hockey Podcast, which we're going to touch on that lack of title here in a second. But the yin to my yang, the PB to my J, my co-host with me is, of course, none other than my good friend, Mr. Kyle Rimbus.
Words.
Hey, buddy, how are we?
Words.
Are you having as much difficulty with words today as I am?
Probably.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier, and you have your own particular struggles as a father of two very young children. And I have been having my own particular struggles today, which I'll touch on in just a second. But tell us a little bit, how's dad life? How has life changed for you between 0 kids and 1, 0 and 2, and 1 and 2?
Man. Well, I will say this one, as you'll probably hear in the background a couple times, also struggles with words, as she knows, probably 2, maybe 3, which is, baby. It's been incredible. It's been really fun. I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of love being a dad. It's the greatest thing that has ever happened to me in like my entire life. And like this little one just started walking recently. So watching her walk across, the room to you is just like kind of exploding with love. And our older one is just like, she likes being tickled. She likes bubbles. She likes, dinosaurs. So life is just about as simple as it can possibly be right now. Don't talk to me when we get into calculus and, later on down the road. But right now, sunshine and rainbows are not only their favorite things, but it's as easy as it's been.
I mean, just by way of interest, she sounds a lot like you. So I think I can figure out which tree that apple fell from.
Oh, God, this thing is the same person as me, except for the fact that she can take a hit way better than me.
Well, I suppose that does give you some opportunity in the future to impart your legacy. I suppose the question of golf has to come up as to if she's going to be trained in that in the future, right?
That's happening. Both of them are, whether they like it or not. And that's going to be the final straw. And if, the wife gets in the way, we have golf clubs.
Perfect. And, between the two of us, I'm sure we still know enough golf professionals and golf adjacent individuals that I think you're going to be fine.
Very likely. Hopefully so anyway.
And as I was saying earlier, my struggle today has actually been one that the state of Texas is to blame for, as is the case with many problems in my life. For those that don't know, Texas has been notorious for its power grid issues. In particular, over the last couple winters with its snowstorms and ice apocalypses. Long story short, Texas is on its own power grid, and it reared its ugly head again today. There were significant power outages in my area, and after reporting it, the word I got from the experts, whoever they may be, was that it was going to take anywhere between 2 and 10 hours to repair.
Yikes.
Not an ideal situation. I think the worst part about it is actually the fact that it's the middle of summer. Like it was 106 degrees with a heat index of about 110, only going to get hotter throughout the day. And so my mind was really only thinking about, I don't have air conditioning for the foreseeable future. That's awful. And I was starting to make contingency plans about whose couch I would be crashing on in the meantime. But I think my saving grace was that my particular grid here in the city is connected to a hospital, so I get a little bit of preferential treatment. At least I think I do.
If you need a couch, I've got several of them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So all that to say, we were both kind of wondering if this was even going to happen today, but we are here. We are happy to be here, and happy to be kind of re-kicking this thing off, because you and I, we recorded a couple episodes long ago. Life got in the way for both of us.
Like a year, like today, even.
It was pretty darn close to that. I still have the original recordings, and like I said, life got in the way. We were unable to find any sort of consistent schedule, and I think we finally have a good solution in place. So here's hoping going forward this is going to be a more regular thing. One of those things that got in the way, albeit a very minor thing, is we never actually came up with a name for this Hockey Podcast.
Unfortunate. How?
And I think at least in the meantime, we'll roll with Untitled Hockey Podcast. But anybody that's viewing this on Twitch live right now or on YouTube when the replay comes up, if you got any ideas, please let us know because we are idea starved on
Please,
this.
yes.
And I would like to have a solid name before I start putting this out on Spotify and Apple Music and all the streaming services. So there's my my appeal to the audience to please help us out on season 1, episode 1. We desperately need your help.
Please.
Yeah.
I've tasked my wife with this as well, and she's usually the one to come up with names, and she has been just as hard pressed as we have been.
It's difficult, but anyway, let's jump into it today. We have some good topics that we had discussed. I feel like we're going to be able to go. We're going to be pretty verbose with these, if I had to guess. But it's the offseason right now. There's not a ton happening. We already hit our milestones with the Stanley Cup Finals being finished out. We hit the entry draft. We hit the free agency. And pretty much all of free agency is done now, minus a few big names that still do not have contracts, such as Erik Karlsson. Patrick Kane is still unsigned, last I saw. But it's difficult to come by news in the offseason, in July and August in particular. Once we get later into August and into early September, we're going to be talking training camp, who's going to be making final rosters and all that. But before we get into any topics today, something that Kyle and I do on a daily basis, and we often bounce ideas off each other, is a little game that is called puckdoku. If you are familiar with the Sudoku number puzzles, it's basically that, but featuring hockey teams. And every day it gives you a grid full of teams and sometimes statistics that you have to look into. And so we thought this would be a good way to open the show whenever we do it. So we have not seen this before right now. Both of us are notorious for doing this first thing when we wake up.
Yep.
So we're just going to have to we're going to have to go through this thought process on the fly and see what we can come up with. So without further ado, let's see what we're dealing with today.
I'm just going to say a vast majority of my ideas are either from, past video games that have been played in the child youth. So, and a lot of it's coming from the 90s as far as eras go. So let's try not to, I'll try not to do anything too far back.
And see, a lot of this is, it shows some fun difference between not only how we grew up with the sport of hockey, but where we grew up as well. You know a lot of names, and I've seen your grids that just rock my world. I've never heard of them before, but
you too.
Well, and see, that's exactly it. As a child of the 80s and 90s, I know the Tampa Bay Lightning history. I can start rattling off names, which is great when they come up on a grid. But like today, we don't have that. So truth be told, when it comes to me doing this game, most of the time I end up falling back on recency bias, meaning if I can pick out a trade that's happened in the last 2 years, that's the name I'm going with. But it's almost always the popular one, and you want to aim for that low percentage score. So anyway, let's start here with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Buffalo Sabres. Woo, good start today. I already have a name in mind, but as I said, it's a recency bias. It's probably going to be a popular one. So I'll defer to you if you've got one of those bizarre names in your back pocket here.
The first one that comes to mind right now is Wayne Simmons. But I'm trying to find somebody else a little bit further back, and I've got some weird names like Asplund coming up right now. I don't know if he was a Maple Leaf.
Ooh, I used him the other day, but I can't remember what it was for.
I'm just trying to think of a couple more. I mean, I know Wayne Simmons is going to work in that spot.
Yep, it will. The name that popped into mind immediately for me was Zach Bogosian.
Nice. I never think of him as being a Leaf. That's interesting.
It was a 1-year stint that he had with them in between cup runs for Tampa.
I never think of him as being a Leaf. And my thought process always goes from, okay, so are we doing something in the current, modern day times? Are we going to 90s? Are we going to 80s? Are we doing defensemen? Are we doing a goalie? Are we doing offensive players? And then this is just where my mind just falls down the rabbit hole like a toilet bowl.
Yeah. Have no worries. We're going to have a full column of goalies over here to work with. So we're going to hit that one. But
I'm particularly excited about that, actually. I think I've got everybody on that one so far.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you have an outstanding past name for this category for Toronto and Buffalo?
Oh, I'm thinking freaking Tim Kennedy, but I know he never played for Toronto. Oh, you know what? We've got was no, we don't have Daryl Sittler. I'm thinking of if Dale Howardchuck was a Toronto Maple Leaf, and I don't think he was.
I don't think so either, but I am not the Toronto faithful, so
Oh,
I'm sure we're gonna get made fun of in the comments for all 9 of our picks here.
I hope so. Oh man,
Yeah, tell us how wrong we are.
I'm gonna look this up and see if I can find something about Dale Howardchuck. I don't think this guy was ever a
Okay.
Buffalo player.
In the absence of anything coming to mind, I'm putting good old Zach Bogosian in there, and you can tell me if Dale Howardchuck was indeed. Oh wow, Zach Bogosian was a 6% pick. I did not see that coming.
I'm gonna do Wayne Simmons on my end and see what we've got for altering situations. I've got 5 on that one.
5. Okay, nicely done.
Yeah.
All right. Toronto Maple Leafs and Chicago Blackhawks. Again, recency bias is hitting me hard right now just because of a trade that was made, I think, this past season. So my immediate thought is Sam Lafferty, but I will once again, I'll bow if you have a great name from the past.
I don't at the moment, and I'm thinking like the earliest of early. I mean, we've got 2 original 6 teams. Realistically, I mean, if you think about it, because of those original 6 teams, you can really just kind of put just about any outstanding player from any team on the same team, just given how few they actually had to trade with between each other. But
it's true. And as we have discussed before, one of my pieces of useless knowledge is I know the one player in history that has played for all 6 original 6 teams, and that was going to be my go-to for Toronto and Montreal, but we'll get there in a moment.
The first one I'm thinking here is going to be Doug Gilmour.
Doug Gilmour. Okay.
Doug Gilmour's my guy, but I'm trying to think of any other better ones. I can't really think of any more offhand.
All right, we'll go with Doug Gilmour. 5%. Well done.
Ow.
Well done. As I said, I know what my pick here is, and I am quite confident it's going to be a 0.1%er, but I'll open it up to you anyway, just in case you think you got something better for Toronto and Montreal.
And I'm pretty sure Bernie Geoffrion name. I mean, my grandfather probably doesn't remember him. I am 90% sure he was a Leaf at one point in his career. Oh gosh. Just for the fun of it, Conacher. Oh gosh, what is his first name? Conacher.
Corey Conacher?
The oldest Conacher, Charlie, right?
Oh yeah, Charlie Conacher.
Was he a Canadian?
I do not know.
It's gonna bother me. I can't stand to look this up. I get fine. So Hockey Database has been like my lifeline of the last several weeks. By the way,
it is a credible resource. Hockey DB is just the best.
Out.
But in the meantime, I'm going to go with my ace in the hole here. If you need a piece of useless trivia, the only player to play for all 6 original 6 teams, and he did so in a 12-year career, is Mr. Vic Lynn at 0.2%. I was off by 0.1.
All right.
I was off by 1/10%. Moving on to the Minnesota Wild column. Minnesota and Buffalo. This is where I'm going to say I don't have too terribly many ideas.
I don't either. The first thing that comes to mind is Kyle Brodziak. But okay. I don't know if he played for Buffalo. That's a stab in the... Oh, you know what? Marcus Johansson we could put there.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Good call.
Definitely put him there. I'm going to look up Brodziak. That's going to...
Hey, 4%. Nice. Our highest is 6%. I get the feeling it's probably going to change with this one on Minnesota and Chicago. Now, I already have mine locked in. It's going to be a popular pick because it is a goalie. And even though he only played for each team 1 season, it's our man, the Flower Man, Marc-Andre Fleury.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that guy's, come on, legend. You can't go wrong with that guy.
He's going to be a high percentage pick. That's the only thing that's kind of pulling me back from doing it. So if you got a better name, then please, I'm all ears for that one.
Who have we got for? No, I was going to say Greenway, but he never played for Chicago.
Not to my knowledge.
Who have we got there?
I know the name is wrong, but for whatever reason, Dustin Bufflin jumped into my head. I know he didn't play for Minnesota. He played for Chicago, played for Winnipeg, didn't play for Minnesota.
I think I'm as sure as you are that is correct. Chicago and see, this is kind of what gets me. New teams versus original six teams. You have so much of an era from which you can select from, but.
Well, the good news with this one, if we need to fall back on this one too, according to the official rules of puckdoku, we can use the teams that these were based on. So, in fact, we can use the Minnesota North Stars because they did become. Or I might have that backwards. Didn't the Minnesota North Stars? Did they become the Dallas Stars, or did they become the Minnesota Wild?
They became the Dallas Stars.
Okay, then never mind. We're not using anything from the Minnesota North Stars.
Probably. I don't know if Minnesota actually had a team before their actual team.
I don't think they ever relocated. Yeah. I had it in my mind for some reason that they did, probably because Minnesota. But
yeah, makes sense.
I don't know. Are you coming up with anything besides Fleury here?
Oh, I mean, I'm thinking like defenseman. I know Matt Dumba's not the right one because he's been a Minnesota Wild his whole life.
Yep.
I mean, Ryan Hartman.
Ryan Hartman. Okay. What do you think is going to be lower percentage, Ryan Hartman or Marc-Andre Fleury?
Oh, gosh. I think they're probably going to be just about as close to each other as you can get.
I feel like Hartman is probably going to be higher because Hartman is known for being a Minnesota Wild.
Exactly.
Whereas Fleury, like Chicago 1 year, Minnesota 1 year. He's most known for being Pittsburgh and Las Vegas.
Malcolm Subban was never a Wild, was he?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I don't think so either.
I think he was in Chicago. I want to say he was in Montreal, but I don't think Minnesota was a thing. But I also don't want to belabor this for too long, because you and I could easily spend an hour sitting here and coming up with names. Oh, Marc-Andre Fleury at 45%. Yikes. You'll have to put Ryan Hartman on yours and tell me what percentage that came up with, because that one kind of threw off our game here. Kyle, did I lose you? I feel like I lost you. I might have. I feel like he's gone. Oh, no. Well, that's a bit of a streaming faux pas. But anyway, until I get Kyle back on here, I'm going to try to talk about some of these the rest of the way. I'm going to try to stall for time, as they say in the radio business, the entertainment business. So I'm actually going to leave Minnesota and Montreal alone. Oh, Kyle's back. There we go.
Hi.
Never mind. I didn't have to stall for too much time. Fantastic.
My sincerest of apologies. I went over to another page and it logged me out there.
Womp womp. Okay, so Minnesota, Montreal. I'm going to admit I'm probably just as lost here.
Oh, gosh. All right. I'm going to throw out the weirdest name, and I know for a fact that he played for Montreal. I'm going to say Craig Rivet.
Craig Rivet. You're probably going to have to spell that last name for me.
And I'm going to, oh, God, I just don't know if he ever played for Minnesota. I feel like he's too early era to have played for Minnesota.
Right.
We've got to have a better choice than that. Oh, man. I don't know why my mind is just yelling Craig Rivet was a Wild player. Let's see here. Who have we got?
This is where the recency bias really doesn't do any good for me, because I can't recall any time in the last 5 years, at least, that Minnesota and Montreal have made any sort of a trade. Now, I'm sure that there has been some crossover for free agency, but for the sake of like, oh yeah, I remember that happening, it's just not there.
No Kostitsyn's ever played in Minnesota. I always find myself thinking about Kostitsyn's when I think of Montreal and added on teams past the 90s. Oh man, I know
we have a very vocal fan back there. Maybe she has some ideas.
She probably does, but they're probably not the right ones.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh gosh, oh my gosh, that's gonna drive me nuts. I keep wanting to say Patrice Brisebois in my head, but I know that's not right either.
No, definitely not.
No one.
I'm going to throw out a name here. I might be right. I might be wrong. Did Mike Riley ever play for Minnesota? I feel like
Mike Riley definitely played for Minnesota.
Okay, well, we know he played for Montreal.
I am absolutely certain that he played for Minnesota.
Cool. Let's run with that then.
That was his first team, if I'm not mistaken.
Mike Riley at 3%.
Beautiful.
I dig. All right, now let's get into the fun stuff.
By the way.
Buffalo Sabres goalie, 90+ save percentage season. Now you have a lot of options here.
Yes,
for sure. All things considered, a 90+ save percentage for a season isn't that high of a mark to actually hit. So you don't have to be a superstar goalie to hit this.
Yes, you've got about a half of your entire franchise worth of goalies to pick from.
Yeah. And you could even say we're going to talk about Linus Ullmark coming up later in the show. And
yes.
You have to know that he's, I think he hit over 90% save percentage during his entire career with the Buffalo Sabres. You could easily throw Dominik Hasek in the mix because he's Dominik Hasek.
The one I'm randomly thinking of, the guy that just absolutely just slayed in his last season of his career before going to Buffalo was Carter Hutton.
Yeah, but he would have had to do it in Buffalo.
And I don't know that he did. I know he got like a 9.40 or something close like that with St. Louis the year before he went to Buffalo. And the obvious choice that I'm thinking of is Ryan Miller.
Oh yeah, Ryan Miller's a good one too.
Oh gosh, you can always go with Dominik Hasek on this play, though. I mean, you can never go wrong, and I feel like he's just about as obscure enough.
You think
from
so?
This website standpoint, maybe not all time, but
that's fair. That's fair. All right, let's see what Dominik Hasek comes up with. 38%. I mean, he's arguably, not even arguably, he is one of the best goalies of all time.
I would say he's Buffalo's best all-time goalie.
He's Buffalo's best for sure. I know he's been in the conversation. Yeah, he absolutely. Chicago Blackhawks goalie, 90+ save percentage season. You want to put Malcolm Subban here?
I'm going to go ahead and stay as far away from that as humanly possible.
Good decision.
All right, so I'm thinking of some weird names here to begin with. Antiniemi to start off with.
Yep, he's definitely up there. Corey Crawford jumped into mine.
Yep, I know we got Corey Crawford there. I'm thinking Eddie Belfour definitely had that.
Absolutely.
I know Jocelyn Thibault had to have gotten that back in the day.
Most likely, yeah.
And the two goalies, it's funny that we've got Chicago and Montreal. I always confuse Jocelyn Thibault with Jose Theodore. Who's a good Montreal candidate next. But
I was going to say we could either, for Montreal, we could put Jocelyn Thibault or go all the way back to Jacques Plante and we'd still be up fine.
Exactly. I'm just going to say Ken Dryden's one of my favorite goalies of all time. And I would just be very, very upset not to name drop that guy. Chicago, who have you got? I mean, I'm trying to think of something like over the top and go freaking 70s with this right now, but I wasn't born then, so my offer wasn't long enough.
I know this wouldn't work because his career was a grand total of one game, but I keep wanting to go with the E-Bug that played for Chicago and won the game a couple years ago. I don't feel like he hit 90%.
That would be so awesome. I think you're right. I'm 98% sure he did like 12 or stopped like 12 of like 30, 25, something like that.
I'm going to look him up real quick. I also don't know if he would even be in the stat website that puckdoku is pulling from.
That is true.
So for whatever reason, he's also just his name is escaping me. Scott Foster. That's who I'm thinking.
Yes. What none of us think of Tony Esposito? How can you forget Tony Espo?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh man, I slapped myself for that one.
Okay, just for posterity's sake, I want to see. Oh my gosh, Scott Foster in his one NHL game with the Chicago Blackhawks, where he came in relief. What do you think his save percentage was for that?
I'm calling 892.
892. Okay. Over 14 minutes he played. His save percentage was a perfect 1,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
there's part of me that really wants to put Scott Foster on this just to see if it works.
I mean, I'm not opposed in any way. If that works, I'd be pumped.
It shows up on screen. Let's go for it.
Come on.
Hell yeah.
Yes!
That was a good pull. I'm a fan of that one.
I'm
All right.
so glad they accept that as an answer.
I'm so happy that they do. Shout out Scott Foster. I hope you get to experience that for yourself. All right, our last, I'll leave this one purely in your hands. Montreal Canadiens goalie, 90+ save percentage for a season.
Ken Dryden is always going to be one of my all-time favorites. I've got to say that guy, hands down. I mean, he was legend to the core.
Ken Dryden. We got a uniqueness score of 108 today. For those that don't know, this is a lot like golf. You want to get a lower score. 108 is definitely not bad. Considering most of my games are in the low 200s, I'm okay with this. Let's see. Ryan O'Reilly.
Of course.
Okay. Sam Lafferty. Okay. I was right on that one. Who we got here? One of the Stahl brothers, Fleury, Hasek, Crawford, Price.
Oh,
yeah.
Jason Pominville was a good one. That's interesting.
Yep. And I don't know who Plekanec is right here. Plekanec. I don't know who that is, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Dang it. I was thinking that guy, but I didn't know he played for Toronto. I was thinking Mike Camilleri too, but I think that could have worked.
Yeah. Ken Dryden was your 6%. Jocelyn Thibault at 2.8.
You just showed me something I've never seen before.
3%. Yeah, I didn't know that this was here either. This might be a thing that's only for the PC, the desktop version, because I've never been able to do this before either.
That is absolutely fascinating to me.
Who I need to know who else put Scott Foster. He had 1%. There are a lot. 498 people put Scott Foster.
What? Wow.
Malcolm Subban had fewer people. I told you we should have put Malcolm Subban. What's wrong with you?
I blame me.
Antti Raanta, Colin Delia.
Wait, what a name. Steve
Perron, Mark Fitzpatrick, Ray LeBlanc.
Gil Meloche was that's interesting. I didn't know he played for Chicago at all, huh?
That is a simply outrageous list. It shows that you and I can always be better at this. As good as we felt that we did for that one, we can still be better.
Mind-blowing.
Before we jump into the next topic real quick, I want to give a little shout out right here because my boys, the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's been a busy offseason for them, and we're going to talk about offseason here in a second. But you know what they did today, what they dropped on their social media? They are showing us new threads for our pickups. There's your boy, Connor Sheary.
That's our puckdoku right there.
He's going to be rocking 73. Yep. I know a few others, like Brett Connolly's the one I always use for Tampa, Washington. Luke Glendening, number 11.
Well, I forgot you guys got Glendening.
Yeah. Calvin DeHaan taking over Jan Ruda's number at 44. That's going to be a hard one to adjust to for me.
Right.
I'm a big fan of Jan Ruda. Same thing with Connor Sheary. That's Adam Ernie's old number.
Is it really?
Yeah. Adam Ernie is far enough in he's far enough in the past that it's not going to hurt as much, but it's still just going to be one of those, oh yeah, Adam Ernie used to play for us. Josh Archibald, number 15. I can't think of too many players that wore 15 for Tampa, so I'm okay with that. 11, if I'm not mistaken, was Brian Boyle when he was here.
It would have definitely been Brian Boyle.
I feel like it was.
It's funny that we came to the same name at the same time. That was weird.
Right. And Jonas Johansson at 31.
Which, by the way, under the radar pickup.
Yeah, I still feel like he's going to be third goalie. I don't know who the backup is going to be, but I feel like he's going to be. If he's not third goalie, it means that they're going to promote Hugo Onfeldt to be third goalie, and Johansson will play 30 games behind Vasilevsky this year.
Interesting to see it. He's not a bad goalie.
Yeah, there is some. Gosh, who was it? I'm thinking of another Tampa Bay goalie that wore 31 way back in the day. Not way back, like 2000s. But anyway, I digress.
I just need Darren Pupa because what a name.
Good old Darren Pupa. All right. The first thing that we want to discuss tonight, and we kind of alluded to it already, is the NHL offseason. It has been as chaotic as we anticipated that it was going to be. In no small part due to the Chicago Blackhawks winning somehow the NHL draft lottery, winning the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, and actually having themselves a damn good draft. Let's not overlook that. They made some solid acquisitions by virtue of the draft, including acquiring Taylor Hall from Boston. They acquired veteran presence in Corey Perry from the Tampa Bay Lightning and subsequently re-signed him for 4 years.
For a lot of money.
And there's been so many good signings that we agree on. And then there's been some ones that we definitely differ on, like Pierre-Luc Dubois going to the LA Kings, figuring out if that was a smart idea by either party. But what we kind of want to focus on for purposes of this right now, who has had the most surprising offseason to you so far? That could be good, bad, or you could just be saying, hey, they didn't do crap and they really needed to.
If you had to put me on the spot with that, I'm putting Seattle up there just off of out of the first couple of thoughts, but I'm going Chicago all day with this. I mean, like, to pick up Taylor Hall, did they get Nick Foligno as well, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, in the same deal.
And they picked up, I mean, just a number of pieces to go around a player. I mean, obviously, first year you have, I mean, obviously before this offseason, you had a mid at best, below average, probably Chicago team that has now kind of turned themselves into, more of an average team. I wouldn't say that they're good. I wouldn't say that they're playoff bound, but I think that Connor Bedard now has more of an opportunity to put up more than 60 points in a season. I thought he was going anywhere between 50 to 60 without Taylor Hall, and you've got a guy that has been around for years. He was the first overall selection in his own draft, so he has the pedigree. He's also had the ability to go through all of the trials and tribulations of being, a failed first round pick, really at the end of the day, for a lot of his career, and hasn't been one of those decorated guys. So I feel like he's going to be a really, really good anchor for Connor Bedard to kind of base himself off of, especially if he starts to stray his way off of the path.
It has to be said again, as much of a Chicago hater as I am, and I am absolutely a Chicago hater, not just because of the Stanley Cup final results in 2015. I'm still bitter about that, but I'm past it. Like, we've won 2 cups since then. I'm good. And we'll discuss this at length another time, but I think the thing that sticks in my mind about the Chicago Blackhawks is the legacy that they're now leaving behind by virtue of the generation that was Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, and how there's a giant black mark on that legacy now because of the way they mishandled Kyle Beach and the John Doe cases and everything like that. So there's part of me that I will fully admit my bias on this. I don't want Chicago to do well, but I also can't ignore the fact that they had a stellar offseason. You're absolutely right about that. Everyone knew that they were going to go and get Connor Bedard. As soon as they won pick number one, it was a foregone conclusion. Like, you'd better just be putting your betting odds on who's going number 2, which I think a lot of us were wrong about as well.
Sure were.
But you're right. They put the right kind of pieces around him. And that was the more intriguing part leading up to this. Was Chicago, at least leading into this offseason, was a hot mess. They didn't have any sort of depth, no infrastructure, nothing to support a generational talent like Connor Bedard.
Bad.
And now all of a sudden, what did you do? You went out, you got a prolific scorer in Taylor Hall. You added some very good veteran presences in Nick Foligno and in Corey Perry. They have been building around him to the point where they are actually going to give Connor Bedard a chance to succeed and not have to carry the team on his back. And I think that's the best way to acclimate him to the NHL.
Exactly. And you still got young guys in that system. You got Lucas Reichel. You've got a couple of other guys that are going to step up, and I'm sure that are going to end up finding their way sooner than later, especially because of that veteran presence. And you never know if you get Jonathan Toews back. You still have, your captain for the last several decades. I don't know, decades, at least a decade, maybe, 12, 14 odd years. But Jonathan Toews cannot be undersold. Honestly, he's captain. He's Captain America. Captain Canada. You know what I mean? But he's been such an unbelievable leader for such an unspeakable amount of time, and to be able to at least have him within those four walls is going to be good for Connor Bedard's growth. But again, I'm still not super duper high on Connor Bedard yet. I mean, obviously he has yet to strap on skates. Yes, he hasn't really gone into a professional arena yet, and watch him just blow up for 170 this year and just make me eat every single word that I've ever said. But
Yeah.
I'm calling Connor Bedard anywhere between 50 to 70 points. I'm putting him square right almost smack dab in the middle of that at 58. And he's just going to have an unbelievable, ridiculous career coming up. But he's got to definitely get himself set up on a team that is much more ready now, rather than having this whole rebuild process happen.
Yeah, and a rebuild that we thought was going to take a while. You mentioned it while you were opening into this, that they're not playoff ready right now. Of course not. How could they be? But they're a lot closer today than they were this time last year, significantly closer. And Connor Bedard, yet it's one piece. No matter what you want to say about a generational talent, look at the last Connor to get taken number one. Yes, he's had tremendous success. He is lighting up the score sheet. He is breaking records. He's doing things we haven't seen quite literally since Gretzky and Lemieux. But how many Stanley Cups does he have?
Not a single one, my friend. And I mean, at the end of the day, let's just hope he doesn't end up like a Lafreniere or a freaking, at this point in his career, or a Nail Yakupov.
And oh gosh, Yakupov. But it just goes to show that, especially in the sport of hockey, a generational talent does not a team make. And you need to have a support system around him, especially as he's growing. He's got to get his feet wet in this league. He's 18 years old? He's a kid. He's a kid. And you're asking him to play with the big boys immediately. But just looking down their roster right now, they put a lot of short-term deals in place to give him the ability to but they're going to give him the opportunity to grow. And I think depending on how this year goes, they're probably going to end up re-signing these guys to longer term deals. Taylor Hall, he's through 20. He's got 2 years on this deal. Tyler Johnson, former Tampa Bay Lightning, he's got another year on his. Andrei Athanasiou, Nick Foligno, Corey Perry, Jason Dickinson. Wow. All solid veteran names that are on 1 year deals or 2 year deals. They're going to be fine. If they, let's put it this way. How many points does Chicago need to get this year to retain this kind of roster, just for the sake of saying, hey, we built something, let's run with it? How many points would you, if you are Corey Perry, let's say, towards the end of your career, how many points does Chicago need to get in order for you to say, you know what, I want to re-up one more year?
Oh my goodness. Not the amount that they're going to get this year, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I'll give you that all day. Otherwise, if I'm Corey Perry, though, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to hang on for dear life and get wherever the heck I could get. That's how old is this
he's
guy
made
now?
the move right now to
38.
He's made the move to go chase money, and he should. He's 38 years old.
Absolutely.
He that cup has been just out of reach for him for the last 4 years.
Exactly. And at least he got one.
He did way back with Anaheim.
Yep.
But think about this most recent run he's been trying to make. Montreal fell in the finals to Tampa, goes to Dallas, falls to Tampa in the finals, comes to Tampa, falls to Colorado in the finals, sticks around Tampa one more year, and of course, an early first round exit at the hands of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think Corey Perry is chasing a cup anymore. I think he's trying to make bank, but still, let's just reframe the question this way. What number of points do you think constitutes a successful season for the Chicago Blackhawks this year?
I would actually even put that in the same category as many points as I think Connor Bedard is going to get. I'm going to call it anywhere between 60 to 70. If I get 70 points with this team, I'm pumped. I mean, if you look at the goaltending situation and Peter Mrazek, you're not really, and I mean, Arvid Soderblom, I mean, tell me who he is without looking at a piece of paper. It's looking about as ugly as humanly possible. I mean, their goaltending situation is really the scariest part of it for me. Their defense is, I mean, Nikita Zaitsev is, a liability at best. Connor Murphy, I will give a lot more credit to a guy like Connor Murphy who just stands in front of shots and blocks pucks, trash, gloves, hands, faces, everything.
Yep.
Outside of that, I mean, Seth Jones, I am a little bit more high on Seth Jones personally than an overwhelming majority of the hockey population. Just based on the fact that I feel like he's better than he gets the rap for. He's got a
But is he 9.5 good?
Oh no. If he were
No,
on a
he's not
different
9.5 good.
If he's on a different team and he's putting up the numbers that he does as far as his time on ice, the plays that he makes out of the zone, he's a good offensive defenseman. But on the team that he plays for the amount of money that he makes, he is way overrated. I mean,
I'm right there with you. I thought he was a bit overrated coming out of Columbus, but everybody said, "Oh, he's playing on Columbus. It's a crap team. Like, what else do you expect from him?" Yada yada yada. And so, jumping into another situation like Chicago, it's easy to say the same thing. Maybe we don't actually know how good Seth Jones is because, I mean, at 28 years old, you'd really hope that he has had the opportunity to play on a contender, but he hasn't. The closest he got was the 1 year where Columbus swept Tampa in the first round and then ultimately lost in the second round. That's the closest. Yeah, that's the closest he's come to any sort of playoff success.
Unfortunate.
But yeah, Chicago, they got $12, almost $13 million of cap space left. I don't think they're done this offseason yet. 14 forwards, 7 defensemen, 2 goalies. They're probably going to add another goalie for the sake of depth. They absolutely need to. They probably need to retool that defense a little bit. But anyway, Chicago has definitely been I'm not going to say a pleasant surprise this offseason because I don't believe that, but they have been a surprise this offseason. But I will tell you who mine has been. I actually went back and forth on this for a little bit because the first one that came to mind for me was the Nashville Predators. And just because it's the changing of the guard, you have Barry Trotz making his way in, making a clear statement about the culture change that he wants there, and essentially just saying goodbye to Matt Duchene. And like that sends a pretty clear message. But we also know pretty much who Nashville is at this point in time. So there's nothing that's really been done that's been overly surprising other than we're kind of waiting in anticipation. My most surprising offseason so far, and not in a good way, has to be the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Whew.
And listen, Toronto had the weight of the world on its shoulders going into the Tampa series earlier in the spring. They, depending on who you ask, they slayed that demon and made it to the second round where they got run over in 5 games to the Florida Panthers.
18-wheeler.
And it showed just how unready Toronto was to make a deep run. I can sit here and argue all day that Tampa was also exhausted, was clearly not ready, blew a bunch of leads. I could even confidently say that I think Tampa was the better team for most of that series. But results are what they are. And I'm not going to sit here and, make a big fuss out of any of that. I think the surprise of the offseason for Toronto, for me, it starts with Kyle Dubas no longer being there.
Wild.
That is the most wild thing. Because look, Kyle Dubas, as any good GM is going to do, has been playing the long game with Toronto. Okay. He's been able to do the things that he wanted to do in that system. He had a tremendous amount of control over the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. Unheard of, probably, considering that it's the Leafs too.
So
right?
many moves.
One of the most difficult teams that has to work for. Like that's not a job that you take lightly. But guess what? He managed to keep the core 4 together, which I would argue is the core 5 in Marner. Why do I keep saying Marners? I keep putting an S on the end of it. Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, and Morgan Riley. I almost said Mike Riley for some dumb reason.
We just said Mike Riley earlier. It's fresh in your head.
That's true. he kept that core together. And listen, they didn't do anything, not in the playoffs at least, but they have had arguably their most sustained period of regular season success in a very long time
Without it.
under Kyle Dubas. And coming off of that, like I think, listen, I'm not plugged into Toronto media, Toronto fandom outside of just listening to the Steve Dangle podcast, but it sent a very clear message to me when Brendan Shanahan gets up and basically airs all the dirty laundry of the conversations that he and Kyle Dubas had. And like, look, I understand Kyle Dubas. You got to get up and speak your mind at the end of the season during your press conference. GMs are probably less bound by that whole be trained in how to speak to the press and just have canned answers the whole way. But man, that was so disastrous to see fall apart. I feel bad. I don't feel too bad for Kyle Dubas anymore because he's got a good setup in Pittsburgh and he's going to thrive in that. I guarantee it. But they did that right before the draft. And now you're asking a brand new GM to come in to take over the draft strategy on this team, to try to work out deals for Matthews and for Marner, to try to figure out how to work with the razor thin margin you have on your cap space. And on top of that, they end up losing. They lose big time on some of their pieces. Yeah. Ryan O'Reilly is gone. He's in Nashville now. Noel Acciari is gone. He's in Pittsburgh now. There's one other big name that I'm thinking of.
Justin Hall definitely got a bag in Detroit too. Crazy.
Justin Hall, yeah. I personally think Justin Hall got overpaid, but that's just me. Being close enough to Toronto and seeing how Justin Hall plays, I think he was a liability on that team anyway. Like Michael Bunting, who is also now gone. I think he's in Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. So, and what was like, okay, full credit to Brad Treliving for the moves he tried to make to mitigate some of that damage. I'll pull up the Leafs cap friendly here, but like Tyler Bertuzzi, that's a good signing.
What a freaking
great signing. In fact,
I think he's going to have a career season with them.
Yeah. Max Domi, that's another good signing. Like he, at 28 years old on a 1-year deal, Max Domi is going to want to re-sign there. I guarantee it. Why on earth would a guy like Max want to be there?
$3 million.
1 year, $3 million.
Justin Hall got signed for $4 million, and you're going to give Max Domi $3 million. I'm sorry, that blows my mind.
No, it's ludicrous. But then there are some of the more puzzling moves that they made, like John Klingberg, one of the worst defensive defensemen in the league, mind you.
Undoubtedly.
1 year at 4.15. That is not as nearly as overpaid as he was in Anaheim, but that's still an overpay in my mind. Go out and get
it's a robust contract.
Okay, I understand the reason for that. 135 for 3 years. Yeah, it's I'm okay with that one. But to re-sign 2.4 for somebody that, he's a decent penalty killer, but be your third or your fourth line center the whole year. And that the Toronto Maple Leafs would not have a goalie right now were it not for the fact that arbitration went through and Ilya Samsonov got 1 more year at 3.5 for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like they're going to be in goalie hell soon enough. Like Justin Woll, he's not going to carry the load long term. So they better ride Sammy as long as they possibly can, or work him as hard as they can this one season. Because let's put it this way. If he has a good year, he's not re-signing in Toronto. Like I don't see any player that you go through. I don't see that you go through arbitration and you see that your organization thinks you're worth so much less than you're asking for, and you come out on the other side and be like, I want to play for them again.
Exactly. So especially with the amount of talent that Samsonov has. I mean, I'm a Capitals fan. I got to see him for at least a fair period of time. I felt like, I mean, obviously he was a younger goalie at this point in his career. He was, I would go so far as to call him a lazy goalie. He wasn't one of those guys that always had his game every single game, but when he does have his game, he's got it. And he's a fine goaltender. I think Joseph Wall is a little bit underrated as far as coming from that perspective. I also don't really see him, being a franchise kind of guy. But I do see him possibly having a much bigger role this season than you would think otherwise. I actually think he could take 30 games this year.
Yeah, he could. He's shown that he's NHL caliber, but not starting caliber.
You're right.
Especially when you ship off Eric Shelgren as well. Sorry, you kind of handcuffed yourself to a tandem of Samsonov and Wool, both who show flashes of brilliance. Both have shown that they can get the job done. But if you're staring down this tandem of Samsonov and Joseph Wool, regardless of what team you're playing behind, how confident are you in that goalie tandem?
Exactly. I mean, I'm going to call them the C word that most goalies don't want to hear, consistent. They are not that way as much as they could be. I think Samsonov has, again, flashes of brilliance. I think he could be a rock star. It's just a matter of actually getting to that point and leveling it out and staying that way.
Yep, absolutely. Now, look, with all that said, I still see no reason that Toronto won't make the playoffs this coming year. I think the Atlantic is still going to be as stacked as ever, but this is Toronto's best opportunity to win the Atlantic.
Definitely. And I think so too.
Yes, she does. Speaking of Toronto, that leads us nicely into our next topic here. Ever since the Tampa Bay Lightning won a cup as of late, won a couple cups, in fact, but really one cup in particular that was labeled any number of adjectives, the unfair cup, the Mickey Mouse Cup, the whatever. We've had the question of cap shenanigans because the foundation was laid when Nikita Kucherov sat out for the entirety of a season, recovering from surgery, comes back to the fray right in time for the playoffs, lights up the playoffs, wins a cup. If that wasn't bad enough, the Vegas Golden Knights have done it the past 2 seasons, one of which ended in a Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Last year, most recently being Mark Stone, kind of being the butt of that joke. Now, as we're looking at this season, a lot of teams are in salary cap trouble right now. And look, you can be over the salary cap in the offseason. It's fine. But let's examine what we have to work with here as far as teams that are currently over the salary cap. Toronto is your number one, as we were just talking about. They are currently $12 million over the cap with $10.3 million in LTIR candidates, meaning if both of them are granted, they're still going to be $2 million over the cap. Followed by the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Colorado Avalanche, Montreal Canadiens, Vancouver Canucks, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Florida Panthers, the Washington Capitals, admittedly under $1 million, as are the New York Islanders, the Dallas Stars, and the Calgary Flames. But that means you have a handful of teams that are significantly over the salary cap at this point. Now, when it's all said and done, and we actually start this season, teams like Tampa Bay, teams like Montreal, teams like Colorado, their LTIR is going to kick in and they're going to be fine. And they're still going to have that money to play with, albeit it's not going to be a seriously big amount that they're going to be able to go out and sign top talent, but they're going to be fine. What does a team like Toronto do in a situation like this? And the bigger question that's really at play here is, given the most recent history between teams like Tampa and between teams like Vegas, is cap circumvention, or what I'm calling cap shenanigans, is it getting out of control?
I don't know if it's out of control at this point, seeing as there has been really only just a couple of instances where it has been noticeable. But I think we're on the track of it becoming a significantly larger issue. I feel like just common mentality. If you have, and I'm not trying to take this away from anything, if we have a guy like Kucherov, just for instance, who has, what was it, $8-9 million on the cap, who's been out for the whole season. I completely am behind that. I get that. Comes back, you have a significantly over the cap team. I just don't see someone having that much over the cap in the playoffs to be. I just can't I don't see that. I see that as a fairly unfair advantage in certain situations. And if you're going to play the whole season with the cap and go, in the last 20 games of the year, that you are going to have a bit of cap circumvention, it has to be consistent the entire way through the season. Is basically what I'm trying to say. I feel like it's basically getting reinforcements right in time for the most important time of the year. You're getting your best player who is going to put you that far over your situation. I feel like it should just be a more consistent thing, but I also don't necessarily disagree with the mentality, because if you're going to find a loophole and you're going to use it like that, why not?
Right.
If you're
I've thought about this a lot, because Tampa is usually the brunt of the joke when it comes to this, because 18 million over the cap. Well, guess what? You're absolutely right about that. Could Nikita Kucherov come back, or could he have come back and play late in the season? Probably.
Maybe.
Could Mark Stone have come back late in the season? Probably. But we don't know that. It's all speculation at this point. But I think the difference between teams like Tampa and teams like Vegas versus a team like Montreal, who is definitely doing some cap shenanigans right now, is a team like Montreal. If you remove a Nikita Kucherov or a Mark Stone, they're sunk. They're done for the whole season. They are not going to be able to maintain that same level of play like they're done for. Tampa Bay, you take out Nikita Kucherov for a whole season, guess what? You still got Braden Point, you still got Steven Stamkos, still got Victor Hedman, you have arguably the best goalie in the league, and Andrei Vasilevsky. You have depth for days. You're going to be fine.
You're going to stay afloat.
Yeah, you're not going to worry about that at all. And I think probably the conversation comes as a result of that, because of the teams that I listed, only two are currently non-playoff teams, Montreal and Vancouver. The rest either have been to the playoffs in the last 2 to 3 years, or we're looking at them and saying they're definitely playoff bound. I'm including the New York Islanders in that, and the Calgary Flames in that, because who knows where they're going, but for all intents and purposes, recently they have been playoff teams. And so that ends up raising the question ultimately of, if you have a situation like that with Nikita Kucherov or with Mark Stone, how far in advance are you really thinking about this? To say you approach one of these guys, these superstars, and you say, hey, we want you to sit out a full 82 games. We want you to not be on the ice at all so that we can use you in the playoffs. You may be confident in your team's ability to push through the regular season and to make the playoffs. How do you think a player is going to react to that? To quite literally, their livelihood is taken away from them for an entire season.
True.
No guarantees that they're actually going to come back on the ice. No guarantees that they're going to make the playoffs. I can't imagine that's a comfortable conversation to have between management and players.
I can see that. And if you're really if you're talking about livelihood too, at the end of the day, any player, as far as injury goes, you're never thinking of something like that at the beginning of the season. No. Especially, and even from a general manager's perspective, you can't even say that that's even a preconceived notion. I mean, you can't say that that was a thought through mentality. You really just, as far as Kucherov and as far as Mark Stone's situation goes, as far as I'm concerned, that was an on the fly type of a situation, and you gotta make do with what you got. I mean, Mark Stone is an unbelievable leader. He is one of the best hockey players in the league. Same thing with Nikita Kucherov. I mean, obviously, I would even put significantly better than Mark Stone. And you've got both of those guys. My biggest thing is just that I feel like that's not something that you can prepare for, and you just have to make the best situation out of it.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the rub with this ultimately is it's legal.
Exactly.
The NHL has not officially said that it's legal, but teams are operating with legality in what they're doing. They're not breaking any rules. There is no salary cap in the playoffs. So, you know what? If you were somehow able to do it, you could theoretically have Nikita Kucherov, Artemi Panarin, Timo Meier. You could have all these guys on one team. You could have a full line of that. And if they sit out for an entire season, great. You just need to make the playoffs, come back, and you have an immediate killer line. Like it's all legal, and that's probably where the conversation needs to go on the NHL league level, is to address that clear gap. Because these teams, while we may just kind of squish our faces together and say, I don't like what they're doing. They're not doing anything wrong.
It's true.
The NHL has said as much.
That is
and that's ultimately where the conversation will go. But I think where it starts, at least in the meantime, is with teams that are purposefully acquiring contracts for players that they know are not going to play anymore. Again, Tampa Bay, prime example, because they have Brent Seabrook contract for this year before it runs out. And that's $6 million in cap relief.
Yeah.
Without that, Tampa Bay officially is still $73,000 over the cap. I think they're going to be okay. But without that, they have a lot more hard decisions that they have to make.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's the first conversation that the NHL is ultimately going to have. And I think they said so. They said as much earlier in the spring that they were going to start scrutinizing these kind of deals a lot more to see if it was for malicious cap compliance or if there is some legitimacy to it. They didn't say that they were going to crack down on it, but they did say they were going to start investigating these deals a lot more closely. I don't know what you do with that, and I don't know how you police it either.
See, I don't really know if there's necessarily even a fair way to police this. I mean, at the end of the day, again, it's not your first thought. This is a backup plan. That is a full just bail, hope for the best, hit the red button, and just hold on to your butts.
Yeah. And at the end of the day too, as let's say that you were thinking that, how many players out of the entire NHL are you comfortable saying, I want to sit this player out for 82 games and I'm going to count on the fact that they are going to be an X factor when they come back?
Yeah. I mean, just look at the Capitals just last season. Nick Backstrom and Tom Wilson were injured for a vast majority of the season. They come back and they are not the same Nick Backstrom and Tom Wilson. And you can't expect a guy, even a guy like Nikita Kucherov, who is to say that he was going to even be a factor in any capacity rather than just be a dominant factor? How do you even know that he comes back, he doesn't get laid out in the first shift, and he's done for the rest of the playoff?
There's the equal chance that from the year prior, you have Steven Stamkos, who is injured for the entirety of the playoffs.
Exactly.
He's injured for a significant part of the season going into the playoffs. He comes out, doesn't even play a full game. He plays a handful of shifts for less than 3 minutes on the ice. You can tell he's not going to make it through this game at all.
Sure.
But you know what? It's a fairy tale ending. He scores a goal, helps propel Tampa to a win in that game and to win a Stanley Cup. But that's the other side of that coin. Who's to say that a player like Nikita Kucherov or Mark Stone are going to come back and have that kind of reaction versus being a superstar and an X factor? It's an unknown quantity. And I think the old adage is what specifically that extremes make for poor examples, or for poor I'm losing the word, but basically, we're paying such attention to these two cases because they won Stanley Cups. And I think there are so many more that we could look at and say, this didn't significantly benefit this team's on-ice success.
You're right. You can even look at a guy like Josh Anderson in Montreal, who is also taking up a lot of cap space that we were just talking about. You lose the guy. He's been injured for X number of seasons, but when he came over to Montreal, dude was an incredible player. You get injured, and he's out for longer than anyone ever would expect him to be. And what do? You can never expect something like that to happen. If you lose one of your best guys, he's just got to come back, and you've got to get lucky.
I think another factor in this, and we don't have to talk about this too terribly much because I'm pretty sure you agree. The cap hasn't gone up in 3 years. And in a league where it went up $1 million this past season. Before that, it didn't move for 3 years. It was stuck at, what was it, 82.5 or 81.5, something like that. It's in a league where you have to consistently count on the cap going up so that you can prepare for the future. When you don't have that, you are making it so much more difficult on your teams to have any sort of success in that environment. So look, if the cap had gone up to even 2% in the past few years, would it have made a difference? Probably not, but it's a contributing factor nonetheless.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know. I suspect that we're going to see more cap shenanigans this year. I had to laugh at the fact that the NHL was accusing, the Carolina Hurricanes of cap circumvention with the whole Tony DeAngelo thing. It's that's the wrong case to say cap circumvention.
And with Tony D'Angelo,
yeah, it's a bad one. Okay, I'm gonna catch my breath here for a second because I'm pretty sure I just lost my friend Kyle once again. So I'll use this opportunity to just drop this right now. For any of you watching, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for paying attention, for giving us a little bit of your day. We really do appreciate it. If you want to help support us and, keep on watching, you can chat live with us on Twitch whenever we are streaming. You can always drop comments in the comment box on YouTube when we do put these out. You can find me on pretty much every social media platform there is at Sammy Flair, SAMIFLAIR. I additionally do a bunch of other content on my YouTube, on my Instagram, and on my Twitch. I do like to play video games, believe it or not. And so I'm going to spend a lot of time on Twitch doing that. And with that said, there's my promotion out of the way. I got Kyle back, so we can move on to, oh no, I lost Kyle once again. It's so funny, but never mind. Here we are one more time. Do I got you again?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I got a phone call. I might need to leave soon, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Do you got time for one more?
Probably. Well, no. I may be able to a little bit later this evening, but Taylor's coming here right now. We're about to do food.
Okay, no worries. Tell you what, we will we'll delay this last topic for whenever we get together and record again. And I'm going to answer a few questions before we get out of here. But in the meantime, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to try to do this on a regular basis. We're going to try to come up with a name. Yeah.
Do you want to shoot for tomorrow morning? I could probably do tomorrow morning as well.
Yeah, I think I could do tomorrow morning.
Let's make it happen.
Cool. I'll send you new stuff to talk about.
Love you.
Goodbye, Kyle.
Bye.
All right. I had one more topic that I wanted to discuss with Kyle, and we're gonna push that to what sounds like tomorrow morning, actually. So, in the meantime, I want to get straight to some questions that were asked. I put it out on Instagram. Again, if you follow me on Instagram, I will put these streams as a notice on there so you can ask questions ahead of time. And if there's anything that's on your mind, something you're curious about, something you want to hear me talk about, something you want to hear me be very wrong about, then please feel free to drop it right there. But the first one, and there's one other one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make room for both today. The first one was a simple question, and it was, who is the best European player in NHL history, and why is it Jaromir Jagr? I don't feel like I have to really expound on that one anymore. Jaromir Jagr, his career speaks for himself, and even well into his 40s and probably into his 50s, the man is still playing. Granted, not at an NHL level. Now, depending on if you count Russia as a European, then maybe we're talking about Alexander Ovechkin being the best European player of all time. As a guy who is very likely going to break the all-time goals record set by Wayne Gretzky how many decades ago. We can talk about that when he gets there because he hasn't done it yet. But the overwhelming probability is that he was going to. Now, the question that I'm actually going to talk about, and I'm not truthfully going to talk about the question itself, but it comes from my friend Claire, who offered this on Discord and on Instagram. And she wants to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks as if we didn't talk about them enough earlier in the show. But her question was basically, what pieces do the Blackhawks need to surround Connor Bedard with, calling him a generational talent, and when can we expect to have a cup from them? I believe she used the word dynasty somewhere in there too. I'm not going to answer any of that because we actually did kind of talk about that already. Instead, I'm going to reach out the olive branch here a little bit because I did admit that I am a Chicago Blackhawks hater. I'm not ashamed of that at all. But I also can't ignore that they're doing a lot of the right things right now. And so what I want to actually answer is, have the Chicago Blackhawks turn the corner as an organization, not as a team? Let's ignore the on-ice product for a second, and let's just focus on the team itself. As we noted earlier, they left a giant black mark on their legacy. You know what? They won multiple cups with the tag team of Kane and Taves, with the coaching and leadership of Joe Quenneville. there's so much in the last 15 years or so to love about the Chicago Blackhawks. But ultimately, the thing that most people are going to remember, and new fans especially, is everything that happened with Kyle Beach and with John Dose. And the way they handled things organizationally was an absolute mess. If anybody is defending it and saying that they handled it well, I don't know what you say to those people. You probably just don't talk to them at all because they're not to be reasoned with. But has Chicago done enough to turn the corner now? Because they are working in a new way. They have new management, new GM in place. That seems to have a good enough personality. If you watched anything about the NHL draft and you saw Kyle from Chicago, you'd say that was actually a very entertaining video. I really did love it. And certainly not to make light of anybody's mortality, but the owner has passed away earlier, a week or two ago. I have long been of the opinion that Rocky Wirtz was one of the biggest problems for the Chicago Blackhawks. And I feel that is often a criticism levied against older owners, right? You're talking about billionaires that are in their 70s, 80s, that are still stuck in the way that things used to be. I think that's a fair assessment to put against a guy like Rocky Wirtz. But as far as helping define a culture, I can't see that there was anything healthy that Rocky Wirtz actually added to that organization. And so I have this sort of cautious optimism that, the team is still in the Wirtz family. Okay. The boys are not getting rid of it anytime soon. And if they are, hey, good for them. They're going to make a ton of money. It's their golden opportunity to restore the legacy, not only of the family, but of the organization. They have a golden opportunity set before them right now. You have a generational talent coming on board in Connor Bedard. You have the changing of the guard in the general manager position and in the ownership position. With everything in your recent history fresh on the mind of every NHL fan, with every NHL fan outside of the city limits of Chicago, hoping and praying nothing but failure for you for the foreseeable future, myself included. You have a golden opportunity to turn it around, to show that you learned a lesson from those mistakes. You have a golden opportunity to say, we are not going to be the same Chicago Blackhawks. We, as the Wirtz family, we are not going to follow the legacy of our father. These things are not going to stand. This is how we're going to run our organization. This is how we are going to work within the community. This is how we are going to build our on-ice product. These are the things that we're going to do. It's laid out right in front of them. What will they do with it? Ultimately, I don't know. It remains to be seen. It's going to take us several years to see what comes of it. 5 years down the road, I might raise my hand and say, I was totally wrong about this. And they screwed it up. And they're still the same Chicago Blackhawks that we knew. I don't know. But in the meantime, I think they have done a tremendous job, especially in the last, let's call it 60 days, to help address some of the glaring issues that they've had on the ice and off the ice. So when will they be competitive again? I don't know. 4 years from now, maybe, if they continue to do the right things. When will they be out of the doghouse? That's going to take actual decades. I'm sorry. Because as long as there are people with memories and people that were affected by the way the Blackhawks handled that situation, you're in the court of public opinion, it's going to take you a long time to be rescued from that. And you got to do a lot of the right things, and you got to put up with the naysayers and the hatred for a while. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is. So, Claire, I know I did not answer your question. That was by design. But yeah, suffice it to say, I will be paying significant attention to the Chicago Blackhawks in the very near future. I don't know what kind of success awaits them, but it should be entertaining to watch. I'm not necessarily going to say exciting, but it will be entertaining. As in, I will get my popcorn and watch from behind one-way looking glass. So with that out of the way, we are basically done for the day. I need to rest my voice, get some water, get some dinner. Anyway, as I said earlier, thank you so much for watching. For those of you that watch live, thank you for giving me just a bit of your time today. Thank you for giving Kyle a bit of your time today. Sorry he couldn't stick around for that last little bit right there, but it sounds like we're going to be back tomorrow morning. We'll have some new topics to talk about. If you want to support us, as I said, you can catch these live on Twitch at twitch.tv/SammyFlair, SAMFLAIR. The replays will be uploaded to YouTube at youtube.com/SAMIFLAIR. I almost misspelled my own name there. And if you want to follow me on any social media, guess what it is? That's right, Sammy Flair, SAMIFLAIR. Woo! With all of that out of the way, thank you. Thank you again so much for watching, for listening, however you are consuming this hockey content. We greatly appreciate you. Make sure you check back for more. We're going to try to do this on a much more regular basis and just have some fun with it. Don't forget to comment on the video if you're watching that. Let us know where we went wrong. Tell us we're crazy. Tell us we're awesome. I don't really care. If you're watching on Twitch, then feel free to jump in the chat and ask us questions there. Can always throw things our way and we can put them up on screen and we can talk about them in the moment. But that is going to do it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day and have a great weekend in case I don't actually see you tomorrow. Take care, y'all.